Hi, I'm Emma. I'm 40-year-olds. They say the most painful moment isn't when you bleed. The most painful moment is when you realize the knife is being held by the person you trusted most. Let me take you back to that fateful Tuesday afternoon. 4:15 p.m. Rain was pouring down on Oak Creek Boulevard like a judgment from the heavens. It was freezing cold, but I couldn't feel the temperature. I was numb. I stood there, on the curb, staring at the massive black iron gates of house number 2408. That wasn't just a house. That was my sanctuary. I remember spending hours choosing the paint color for those gates, midnight black, so they would look both powerful and mysterious. I remember every climbing rose bush I planted along that fence with my own hands, nurturing them like they were my children. But now, those gates were locked tight. And behind the plate glass of the living room window, where the warm yellow light was spilling out, was him, Mark. Mark was standing there, holding a glass of his favorite scotch. He was wearing the gray cashmere sweater I bought him for Christmas last year. He was looking at me, not with anger, not with regret, but with a cruelty so indifferent it chilled my bones. He looked right through me as if I were invisible, as if I were just a bag of expired trash waiting for the sanitation truck to haul away. In my hand was an old suitcase with a broken wheel that kept tipping over every time I tried to pull it. Beside me was a soggy cardboard box holding the debris of 15 years of youth. A few clothes, a cracked wedding photo, and my ID. That was it. 15 years of being a wife, a backbone, a shadow to that successful man in the window. His lawyer, a man with a slippery face and eyes like a shark, stepped out from the gate. He didn't offer me an umbrella. He just stood under the awning, tossing me a piece of paper wrapped in plastic to keep it dry. "Ms. Emma," he said, his voice mechanical and void of humanity. "The court order is effective immediately. You no longer have access to this property. If you are still loitering here in 15 minutes, I will be forced to call the police for harassment and trespassing." Trespassing? At the very house I signed loans to help him build? At the place where every brick was cemented with my sweat and my sleepless nights? I wanted to scream. I wanted to rush in and claw that mask of professionalism off the lawyer's face, smash that glass of scotch in Mark's hand. But my throat was choked with bile. An invisible stone was crushing my windpipe. I couldn't speak. I could only turn my back and drag that broken suitcase through the torrential rain. Every step was a knife slicing through my dignity. The scraping sound of the wheel on the pavement was a constant reminder of my humiliation. I had lost everything: my home, my savings, my reputation. And most terrifying of all, I had lost my faith in justice. But, right at that darkest moment, as the rain mixed with the salty tears on my lips, I didn't know that Mark had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He thought he was burying me. He thought I was a fragile flower that would wither and die without his protection. But he forgot one fundamental rule of nature. I am not a flower. I am a seed. And this storm, this is exactly the water I need to germinate, to root, and to break through the concrete to rise again. Hold on. Before we dive into this insane journey, from a homeless woman shivering in the rain to the CEO of a multi-million-dollar empire, and how I made my ex-husband regret his existence without speaking a single word to him, I have a question for you. Have you ever felt betrayed? Have you ever felt the world was so unfair you just wanted to collapse? If the answer is yes, and if you believe that justice always finds a way, hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on the notification bell. Because the story I'm about to tell isn't just entertainment drama, it is a blueprint for turning pain into power. Don't miss a single detail because you might just find yourself in it. Now, let's go back to the rain on that Tuesday. To understand why my fall was so painful, you have to understand the height from which I was pushed, and more importantly, Who built the pedestal I was standing on? Our marriage didn't collapse overnight. It was a slow death, a death by 1,000 cuts. Mark was a genius. I'm not talking about his business acumen. I'm talking about his ability to manipulate. He was a grandmaster of gaslighting. For the last 5 years of our marriage, he silently constructed a false reality around me, trapping me in an invisible glass cage. I remember the evenings I spent looking over bills. Whenever I questioned a strange expense, Mark would sigh, take off his glasses, and look at me with pity. Emma, honey, you're doing it again. You're not good with numbers. Your mind is too emotional to understand investment cash flow. Let me handle the finances, okay? You just take care of the garden and keep being beautiful. Or the times I found ambiguous texts on his phone at midnight. You're becoming paranoid, Emma, he would say, his voice terrifyingly calm. She is just a strategic partner. You are letting your pathological jealousy destroy my business. Do you need to see a therapist? Gradually, bit by bit, I started to believe him. I started to doubt my own memory and my own competence. I believed I was truly useless, a lucky parasite he was kind enough to host. I handed him full control of the finances, not because I was lazy, but because I had been brainwashed to believe I wasn't capable. And then, the day of the trial arrived. That was when the curtain was lifted, exposing the horrific play he had staged. Mark had been preparing for this divorce for 2 years. While I was busy choosing curtains and cooking romantic dinners, he was busy funneling assets. He moved money into offshore shell companies. He bought crypto. He turned profits into paper losses. The final hearing was a perfect performance of cruelty. His legal team, real sharks in $1,000 suits, painted a portrait of me as a gold-digging, mentally unstable wife who contributed nothing to her husband's career. Your Honor, his lawyer declared, Ms. Emma has had no income for the past 10 years. She understands nothing of business operations. All assets are the result of my client's intellect. And me? I stood there with a cheap public defender who didn't even remember my middle name. I stuttered. I cried out of frustration. And in the eyes of that tired old judge, my tears were just weakness, proof of the instability the other side claimed. The gavel banged against the wooden block with a dry thud. I lost ownership of the house. I received a pittance of alimony, barely enough to survive for a few months. Mark walked out of the courthouse, adjusting his silk tie. He walked right past me. In that split second, he leaned in and whispered, I told you, without me, you are nothing. He had won. An absolute, brutal victory. My new residence was room 104 at a Motel 6, a rundown dive on the outskirts of the city. $45 a night. That was all I could afford. The room reeked of cheap bleach, desperately trying to mask the smell of old mold, stale cigarette smoke, and fleeting affairs. The carpet under my feet was sticky with something I didn't dare think about. And the neighbors. Oh, it was a microcosm of the broken. To my left was a junkie couple. The sounds of screaming and throwing objects were their nightly ritual. To my right was a sullen man with a long scar on his face who left at 2 a.m. and returned with mysterious black bags. That first night, I sat huddled on the bed, terrified to turn off the lights. I was afraid of the dark. I was afraid that if I flipped the switch, roaches would crawl out of the walls. Or worse, the demons in my own mind would consume me. I opened my wallet to count my cash. $412.35. That was all that stood between me and sleeping under a bridge. Hunger began to set in. Not normal hunger, but the hunger of anxiety. My stomach cramping in painful knots. I walked to the nearby convenience store, bought a pack of instant ramen and a bottle of water. Standing in line to pay, I saw a business magazine on the rack. The cover featured a successful female CEO with the headline, Master Your Destiny. I laughed. A dry, bitter laugh that almost brought tears to my eyes. Master my destiny? I couldn't even master my dinner. I was just a 40-year-old, failed, discarded woman standing in line to buy ramen with loose change. I went back to the room and ate the noodles raw because the kettle looked too filthy to touch. The sound of crunching dry noodles in the silent room was pathetic. I looked into the bathroom mirror. The woman staring back looked 10 years older than me. Gaunt. Messy hair. Deep dark hollows under her eyes. "You're done, Emma," I whispered to the reflection. "You lost." He was right. "You are a zero." I lay there for 3 days. Didn't shower, didn't leave. Just watched the ceiling fan spin, round and round, counting down the time I had left to exist. I thought about ending it all. Truly. I stared at the bottle of sleeping pills I had with me. At least sleeping forever wouldn't hurt anymore. I wouldn't have to remember Mark's smirk. I wouldn't have to smell this mold. But then, on the third night, something strange happened. An intervention of fate in the most mundane form. Through the paper-thin walls, I heard the junkie couple next door fighting. "You're hiding money again, aren't you? Where's the rent, you bastard?" The woman screamed, her voice cracking with desperation. "I'm not hiding it. I told you I lost my wallet. Are you crazy?" The man growled back. "That phrase, 'you're hiding money again.'" It struck my brain like a lightning bolt. I sat up, my eyes wide open in the dark, my heart pounding. Mark had said that too. Hundreds of times. "I don't have cash. The company is struggling. Cash flow is tight." But Mark always wore $2,000 handmade Italian leather shoes. Mark leased a new car every year. Mark always had money for luxury business trips. Why did I lose in court? Because I couldn't prove he had money. My lawyers were helpless against the complex financial maze he drew. They only looked at what he wanted them to see. But what if I could see what he was hiding? I remembered the sleepless nights before the trial. I had taught myself to dig into tax returns. Even though I barely understood them then, I had learned to read bank statements. I failed because I lacked experience, not because I was stupid. I had intelligence. I had the meticulous nature of a woman who had managed a household for 15 years. A crazy idea sparked, an idea that made the blood in my veins run hot again after days of freezing cold. The next morning, I did something the old Emma would have called insane. I used my last remaining funds to pay for the highest speed internet package for my cracked laptop. I didn't go looking for a waitressing job. I didn't apply to clean toilets. I bet my entire survival on this idea. That shabby motel room transformed into my cave. I spent 18 to 20 hours a day studying. I didn't study how to get rich. I studied how the rich hide money. I scoured every underground forum on forensic accounting. I devoured documents on money laundering, shell corporations, moving cash through tax havens, and crypto tracing. At first, it was like reading an alien language, but hatred is a great teacher. Every time I felt sleepy, the image of Mark's smirk would appear, and I would be more awake than ever. I began to realize that men like Mark, narcissists and egomaniacs, all share the same playbook. They think women are stupid with numbers. They think they are smarter than the system. And that arrogance makes them sloppy. They always leave a trail. A small $50 transfer to an unknown account every month? That's not a glitch. That could be the maintenance fee for a secret safety deposit box at a private bank. A strategic consulting payment to a newly formed LLC in Delaware? That is their laundry machine. I started seeing the matrix. The numbers on the screen were no longer dry digits. They could speak. They were confessions. They were telling me stories of greed and betrayal. I built a simple website on a free WordPress platform. Domain name, Her Financial Truth. I put a bold slogan right on the homepage. Don't let them call you crazy. Let the numbers tell the truth. No clients. Day 1 passed in silence. Day 2. Day 5. My food money was running out. The last pack of ramen was gone. Panic started to claw at my insides again. Maybe I really was crazy. Maybe I should accept my fate and go wash dishes. And then an email arrived at 2:15 a.m. A ding of salvation. Subject: Help me. I think my husband is scamming me, but no one believes me. The sender was Emily, a mother of 2 in Texas. Her story was a carbon copy of mine. Her husband owned a large construction business, always complained about losses, always said the company was about to go bankrupt to cut family spending. Yet he had just secretly bought a new boat docked at a private marina. I took the case. Price: $100. A laughable amount, but to me then, it was a fortune. Emily secretly sent me 5 years of bank statements and tax returns. I dove into that data like a starving beast. My eyes blurred from staring at the screen. I drank cheap instant coffee so thick it made my stomach cramp. And then, at dawn on the 3rd day, I saw it. An anomaly. There was a recurring expense under the name K&J Building Supplies. At first glance, it made perfect sense for a construction company. But my intuition screamed that something was wrong. Why were the amounts always round numbers? Why did they always happen on the last Friday of the month? I cross-referenced the tax ID of the beneficiary, and my heart stopped. K&J wasn't a building supply company. It was a high-end diamond jewelry manufacturer in Miami. Emily's husband was buying diamonds under the guise of construction materials to write them off as business expenses, evading taxes, hiding assets, and gifting them to a mistress all at once. I immediately drafted a 10-page report, detailed to the day, hour, amount, and cross-referenced proof. I sent it to Emily. 2 days later, my phone rang. It was Emily. She was sobbing. I panicked, thinking I had done something wrong. But no. "Thank you, Emma," she said through tears. "My lawyer says this evidence is a gold mine. It changes everything. I'm not just going to get custody. I'm going to get what's mine. You saved my life." In that moment, hearing the trembling voice of that stranger, I felt a jolt of electricity run down my spine. It was more powerful than anything I had ever experienced. It wasn't just $100, it was validation. I was no longer a victim. I was no longer useless. I was a hunter. And those terrible men out there, they were the prey. Rumors spread faster than wildfire. In the underground world of divorcing women, the name Emma, the financial detective, began to be whispered like a secret savior. They passed my number around in private Facebook groups, in therapy sessions. I was no longer at Motel 6, but I didn't rush to luxury. I rented a shabby little office in an old building and put a mattress in the corner. That was my war room. I raised my prices. $500, then $1,000. Then $5,000 for a deep dive investigation package. But the road to success wasn't paved with roses. It was full of thorns and threats. I worked until I collapsed. I developed chronic back pain from sitting in plastic chairs. My eyesight worsened, and I started making enemies. One evening, I received a call from an unknown number. "Who the hell are you to stick your nose in my family's business?" a man roared. He was the husband of a client, a local real estate tycoon. "I know where you are. I will make you disappear if you don't stop." The old Emma would have trembled, turned off her phone, and hid under the desk. But the new Emma? The Emma who slept with bedbugs and ate raw ramen? She wasn't afraid. I calmly hit record on the call, then replied with a voice like ice. "Hello, Mr. John. Thank you for calling. I just recorded this threat. It will be excellent evidence in court, supplementing the file on the Cayman Islands account I just uncovered this morning. Do you want to continue threatening me, or do you want your lawyer to call me to negotiate a fair settlement for your wife?" The line went dead. Only heavy breathing remained. Then he hung up. The next day, his wife received a settlement agreement worth $2 million. 6 months later, I officially left the shadows. I hired my first employee, Emily, my very first client. She was now free and wanted to help other women. We worked like maniacs on a mission. We built proprietary software to automatically scan bank statements for anomalies. We partnered with top-tier law firms. End of year 1. Revenue hit $500,000. Year 2. $1.2 million. Year 3. $3.5 million. I bought a new house. A villa on the hill, with glass walls looking down on the entire city. I bought it with cash. My name stood alone on the deed. No one to fight with. No one to manipulate me. I had money. I had power. But the story doesn't end there. Fate still had one final act reserved for me and Mark. One beautiful Saturday morning, as I was sipping Earl Grey tea in my sun-drenched garden, the phone rang. It was Jacob, a high-end real estate agent specializing in foreclosures. He was a close partner of my firm. "Hi, Emma," Jacob said, his voice excited but hesitant. "I have a steal for you. A house in the Oak Creek area. Beautiful location. The owner went bankrupt due to bad crypto investments and over-leveraging. The bank is auctioning it off cheap to recover capital. Are you interested?" "What's the address?" I asked, though a strange feeling was already stirring in my gut. "Number 2408, Oak Creek Boulevard." My heart skipped a beat. The teacup in my hand trembled slightly. Number 2408. The old house. The house Mark had ruthlessly kicked me out of 3 years ago. "The owner, who is it?" I asked, my voice dry. "Mark. I forget his last name. But this guy is drowning in debt. Rumor has it he mortgaged the house to go all in on some risky crypto scheme and lost everything. His new wife left him last week, too." I fell silent. A long, heavy silence. So Mark had collapsed. His arrogance, his blind belief that he was smarter than the market, had finally killed him. He stole the house, his symbol of victory, only to lose it to greed. "Emma, are you there?" Jacob asked. "Do you want to buy it back? With your resources, you could buy it cash tomorrow. Imagine it, Emma. You drive up there, throw his suitcase on the street, and watch him stand in the rain exactly how he did to you. Isn't that the sweetest, most perfect revenge?" Jacob was right. It was a perfect Hollywood script. I closed my eyes, visualizing the scene. I saw myself stepping out of my Porsche. I saw Mark, aged and defeated, looking at me with pleading eyes. I saw myself laughing in his face and slamming that black iron gate shut. The feeling, it was intoxicating. My blood boiled. The demon of vengeance inside me screamed, "Do it! Make him hurt! Crush him!" "Give me an hour to think," I told Jacob and hung up. I drove there. I needed to see it with my own eyes. I parked across the street, under the old oak tree. The house looked pathetic. The grass in the garden, the rose bushes I used to tend, were dead or overgrown with weeds. The paint was peeling. The black iron gate was rusted. The house looked sad, tired, and lifeless. And I saw Mark step out. My God, was that Mark? He had aged 10 years. His hair was white, his shoulders slumped. He was wearing a wrinkled t-shirt. He was screaming into a phone, waving his hands frantically, likely arguing with a creditor. He looked so small, so insignificant. I watched him, and I waited for the gloating to rise. I waited for the wave of satisfaction to flood my heart. But strangely, I felt nothing. No anger, no joy, no pain, just pity, and a strange indifference. I realized a shocking truth. If I bought this house back, I wouldn't be the winner. I would be the jailer of the past. I would be living within walls that held memories of trauma. I would be haunted by the ghost of a failed marriage, The greatest revenge isn't stomping on your enemy when they are down. The greatest revenge is no longer caring that they exist. Mark was no longer worth any of my emotion, whether love or hate. He was just a stranger I used to know. I picked up my phone. My finger hovered over the screen. Let's stop for a second. I want to ask you, if you were me, sitting in that car, watching the person who destroyed your life crumbling before your eyes, what would you do? Option A, buy the house, kick him to the curb so he tastes the exact pain he gave you. An eye for an eye. Option B, turn around and walk away, let the past die and live your brilliant life. Pause the video right now. Scroll down to the comments and write your choice. Buy it, or walk away. Don't just watch. Put yourself in my shoes. Your choice says a lot about who you are. Did you comment? Good. Here's what I did. Jacob, I said softly into the phone. I'm not buying it. Are you sure? Jacob gasped in surprise. It's a steal. You could flip it and make a profit instantly. I'm sure. I smiled, the lightest smile I had felt in 3 years. Sell it to someone else. I don't buy the garbage of the past. I have new castles to build. I hung up. I started the engine and hit the gas. I looked in the rearview mirror one last time. The image of Mark and that gray house grew smaller and smaller until they vanished around the bend of the road. I didn't feel regret. I felt light, as if a 1,000-pound weight had been lifted off my chest. I didn't take the house back. I did something much greater. I built an empire of my own. An empire built on my sweat, my tears, my intellect, and my resilience, not dependent on or inherited from any man. Mark took away the roof over my head, but he accidentally gifted me the instinct to survive. He wanted to drown me in mud, but he didn't know that mud is exactly where the lotus blooms most beautifully. Today, my company helps thousands of other women find their power. I teach them that money isn't just cold numbers. Money is freedom. Money is options. And most importantly, money is the shield that protects you and the ones you love from those who want to hurt you. So, if you are in the dark right now, if you feel useless, failed, betrayed, if you are standing in the rain with a broken suitcase, remember my story. Don't wait for someone to save you. There is no knight in shining armor coming. There is only you, your 2 hands, and your unbreakable will. Stand up. Wipe your tears. Turn pain into fuel. And start building your empire. Because the sweetest revenge is living a life so brilliant, so happy, and so successful that the shadows of the past can never touch you again.